that is going to mean a lot of cuts elsewhere, a lot of spending restraint elsewhere. So the first thing he's going to need is an iron Chancellor.
Andy Burnham says he wants to rewire Britain. He believes devolution is the key to the UK's future success, and he's going to create a number 10 of the North to coordinate investment outside of London. William's written a brilliant column today about the risks of devolution, particularly given how local journalism has withered away. So we thought we'd speak very briefly to the editor of The Mill, a Manchester online newspaper. He's a guy called Joshi Herman. He's also concerned about the lack of local journalism in the UK. He sent us this.
We need to rebuild local journalism. People need to be paying for their local outlets. We at Mill Media have tried to do that, get people paying for local journalism again. That needs to happen if we're going to start hiring local journalists again, having new strong outlets that can really hold people like Andy Burnham, local mayors, to account. If we do that, then devolving power is great. If we don't have that, then devolving power means moving power away from a place where it is held to account in Whitehall to lots of places where it isn't, because there aren't any local journalists there to do it.
William, I think you've given Burnham a pretty fair hearing in the paper today. Are you on board with the idea of more devolution?
Well, I am in principle. It's out, and I think across politics people are, that definitely you can get better results from good local leadership and people working across different agencies and with the private sector. And that has happened to a large extent in Manchester. Andy Burnham and others can claim some credit for that. But there is this problem. I did point out this problem, and it's good you've been following it up. That the decline of local press, of major citywide and regional newspapers, means who is probing into how money is spent and how councillors are behaving and when there's corruption in local government and so on. This is part of the damage that the current model of social media has done to democracy and public discussion in this and other countries. So we are going to need more thriving local media as well as thriving devolved government.
Helena, what do you make of the idea of a number 10 of the North? Some people think gimmick. Some people think actually it doesn't really matter where it's located. The idea of just moving stuff away from Whitehall so that they spend their whole time focusing on one particular thing, which might be growth, for example.
Listen, I was actually rather excited by Burnham's speech yesterday. I was waiting to hear what he had to say, and I was really rather uplifted by it. And the reason why is because I've argued for more devolution for years, and William will remember that way back in the day, I chaired a thing called Charter 88, which was about creating this kind of change and devolution, because I think that decisions should be taken much closer to the people who are affected by them. And But let me tell you, I share the alarm about the fact that local government is not held adequately to account because of the end of good local journalism. And that is one of the vital things about journalism in our society, is that you really need to shine the spotlight on corruption, on failures, and without it all ending in some catastrophe. But that should be done on a regular basis, and it's not happening anymore. And so I share William's regrets about that, and wonder how best it can be done, that you can revive it. But new technology has had an impact across the whole field of journalism, and it's one of the areas that I do sort of legal work in about the terrible things that are happening to journalists around the world and so on, but also the way in which media organizations are captured by people who are authoritarians in government, are always wanting to be able to control the media. So it's really important to have independent media at every level in society. But let me just talk about Andy Burnham's thing. I thought it was exciting because in some ways we don't scrutinise Whitehall enough. And I have become more and more sceptical about the Treasury. I think that this business that the Treasury holds everybody, they've got them all by the short and curlies, and they really absolutely, I think, diminish inventiveness about what can happen in our society. And I think that in some way taking a real eagle eye to and some readjustments inside the Treasury would be great. And I'd like to see some of that strong grip they've got on our monies, and really the orthodoxies that they're applying. That old-fashioned economics in a time of change are not going to work, and we're not going to see the growth that we want. And I was rather invigorated by the Burnham vision, and I think he has got things to say. He is he's a good communicator, a great communicator, but he also has ideas, and he also has a way of reaching people. There's a sort of poetry in his language, and I have missed that.
That's interesting. Can you ever beat the Treasury, William?
Well, I wouldn't really embark on a vast exercise of breaking all that. This has happened before. Harold Wilson tried this in the 1960s. There actually isn't the time for a new prime minister with 3 years to go maximum to a general election to embark on such a massive reorganization. He's going to need, I pointed out to my colleague, an iron chancellor, because he is already spraying money around everywhere, notionally, of what he's going to spend. And that is going to mean a lot of cuts elsewhere, a lot of spending restraint elsewhere. So the first thing he's going to need is an iron chancellor. And I agree. Of course, he's got some poetry, as Helena says. But you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose, and it's going to get much harder from here on in.
Helena, can I just ask you, because you were making I think probably a point that most people agree with about local journalism, but then were you disappointed to see that Andy Burnham didn't take questions from journalists at that event?
No, I actually thought it was quite smart of him. He's really what the press has been doing, and what the media generally has been sort of saying is, is he all mouth and trousers? Is he all mouth and a t-shirt and so on? And so there's been a suggestion that a question mark is there substance here? Is there meat in this? And I think he really wanted the opportunity of showing what kind of vision he really had, and he covered a lot of ground. And so what happens is that the questions would have been, who's going to be your chancellor, and what are you going to do about and it would have ended up with headlines that were not about the stuff that he wanted to talk about.
But you don't get to control the media, though. That's the point, isn't it? If what we're talking about is accountability and the ability to ask questions, is it not important that you would give that freedom no matter the circumstance? It can't be dependent on whether or not you like the headlines, can it?
Well, if it continued, that there was no kind of interaction, I would be very concerned, of course. I mean, one of the things that I've been outraged about is the fact that even now, journalists are not able to get into Gaza to give us a stronger sense of what has been happening. The idea of banning journalists from places, it is always, it has to be questioned as to what the purposes are. So I don't like it. Let me assure you, Kate, I am big on letting the media into everything, so that we know the truth. But on this particular occasion, he's been getting it in the neck on the basis that he's a great communicator, but is there something below that? And I think he wanted the opportunity of showing that he's got things to say.